there we go. What's the crack, folks? We should be live now. It's myself, Skarner, or Dwayne, if you know me from the Battletech scene, and our special guest this week, Nick from Grey Primer. Way!
Ooh,
Woo! What's the crack?
and we are live. I've
Uh,
just checked.
it's up and running. See, look, you being the competent one of the two of us would actually check the channel and have a look. Whereas I know if I do that, it will mess with the audio and go haywire, which is usually what happens.
Well, because we've got like the 20-second delay, your music was playing, and it was like at 100% in my ear. So yeah, we are live.
Cool. Yeah, I was trying to do the intros, but I find it hard to time them as well. So like you can have the intro for your channel, and then it's like, but you can talk at the same time. So it's like, right, shh, say nothing. We'll do the intro. We'll try and time it. It'll look decent, I promise.
Because your intro music is not subtle.
No, not at all. But yeah, no, it's like 40k orcs and BattleTech. It's all heavy
Nice.
metal rock, shooting, gaming, wrecking stuff. The usual. Speaking of, the hobby I'll be getting up to while we're having our chats is doing the clump foliage smoke effect for the old Stormboyz, which I haven't done
You
before
finding
on
your way back to
miniatures.
green skins.
Yeah. But I reckon it'll look mint when it's done.
Green skins and Skarnir.
It's me.
Feels like you've taken a little break away from it. You've to find your way back.
I did actually. I did. I've been mostly BattleTech. The only reason why I've gone back to the Stormboyz is that we will be doing a load of battle reports,
Mhm.
recording a good few with the other Ork war bosses. And so I decided that I'll go with a teamed army. Since I always have to fly in and bring me miniatures in the Ard case, one of the best cases they ever did, and discontinued. How dare they? I was like, oh well, since I always fly in, I might as well have a flying army. So that's the whole theme is apocalypse now. Hence Stormboyz and smoke plumes and Chinork warcopters converted from trucks to make them look like Hueys. That's the idea. Never done it before,
Orcs is the best.
but it's a good idea. I think it'd be cool, and I think it'd be cool for a diorama. You're always doing dioramas. You know what I mean? I was
Mhm.
thinking sort of the theme of the army, and it seems like the sort of thing that would be good for a diorama. Apocalypse now coming out through the jungle or something.
Oh, that'd be so cool. And there's so many cool little sequences in Apocalypse Now where you could do like, the boat going under a burning bridge or something like that. So there's definitely something there. Elves don't surf. I don't know how you could
Yeah,
do it, but yeah, there's definitely, while remaining sensitive to the source material,
to the
there's
content.
probably
Yeah,
something you could do with like a bow wave coming off like this sort of cool orc boat. And I've done orc boats in the past. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, I've
that's
done a
right.
lot
You
of
have.
orc custom builds, but never an orc diorama.
Mm. Even like the copters, I'm thinking of putting in little touches where if I put like surfboards
Hmm.
underneath one of the copters because they
Oh,
transport
that'd be
them
so
as
cool.
they fly in, like they transport them. So it's a case of if I get the shape of the Huey. So if they get an orc truck, give it propellers and a tail, and kind of try and make it look like a Huey, and I'm just
Mhm.
in the concept sort of stage of that, where I've looked at a good few of them, and it's just how do I turn this truck into that helicopter, but also trying to not just be a helicopter, but make you think of a Huey. So it's like, what are the dominant characteristics of that vehicle that you'd have to transfer across in a conversion
Mhm.
to make you instantly think, ah, Huey. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the bubble canopy on the front, the doors on the side. Um, it's just the rotors.
Mhm.
It's a twin blade rotor. It's only two. They're pretty flat and wide. Hence why it had that typical sort of whoop, whoop, whoop noise
Mhm.
that you think of when you
That was good, by the way.
think of those. The Huey impersonation.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
for future reference, I'll just make my own sort of sound effects.
Yeah.
I won't get any copyright strikes then.
Yeah, I mean, because it's really just like the shape of a Huey is built around that. How is it the most optimal way to transfer people? and it's got a really basic shape to it. It's got that, like you said, the canopy at the front, the little dolphin nose to it. It's got that little
Mm.
bottlenose dolphin nose. And I think that there are very few helicopters that look like that.
No, it's very distinctive. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you can get that core shape of that, the the transport section of it, I think people will feel Huey at a glance. Um, and then you can kind of have it's got quite a long tail,
It does. Yeah.
but it's again a distinctive shape, that tapering shape. And I think that if you nail that, then stuff like rotors, they don't have to be, they can be orky. They can be sort of bolted together.
I mean, you could. I
Um,
think you could do orky rotors and still have them the same. So if you do the same shape and length, and then what
mhm.
I was thinking was 2 layers of plastic card instead of one, so you can cut it up into sections and get those 2 layers to overlap each other. I've done it with banners and such in the past, and then rivet them together. So it'll be the right proportions and the right size, but then it'll look orky because it's all riveted together and a bit ramshackle looking. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
wouldn't be realistic. It's sort of what is it? Artistic impression, or what is it
artistic
when some
license. Yeah.
yeah, you sort of, you just, it's supposed to be this, but I've added a bit of orky flair to it, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, yeah, like the impression side of it as well. You're giving an impression of a Huey rather, you're not starting with a 135 or 146 scale Huey
Yeah, now you
and
could
then
do,
orking
but
it.
I don't think that'd be as much fun. Like, I've looked at some of them and they
Yes.
look kind of cool, but they're kind of the wrong scale as well for that
Hmm.
sort of conversion. So it's
Like this
yeah,
is more like an orc has seen a picture of a Huey and
yeah,
is trying to recreate it with bits of scrap metal.
exactly. That's the sort of, that's the direction I want to go with it, and then have some artistic freedom with it as well. Add in a
Hmm.
few little bits and pieces.
I think the thing that can be surprising sometimes with orcs is how big vehicles have to be to make it look like an orc could fit into it. Because I know I've looked at 146 scale or 148, I can't remember, in the past. And when you put an orc beside it, it's like, yeah, it can't fit into the driving seat or passenger compartment or whatever. It's just wrong. And then you go to 135, and it's like, that's perfect for orcs, but it's wrong for like Imperial Guard or something like that. It just looks too oversized. But then orcs are making it for orcs. Um,
Yeah, it's true.
So no,
I
I think 135 gives you a lot of options for buying accessories and things and using stuff from your kit box, your bits box.
well, that's it. Like, some of the scale tanks, it's like the tank itself might be the right size and shape, but anywhere where there's a hatch or there's a weapon, you're gonna see that the scale is wrong there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's trying to get the best of both worlds if you can, or any handles or little tools, because Citadel and the Games Workshop look is oversized heads, oversized hands, oversized weapons. So that that's what we're kind of used to seeing.
Yeah, the
Um,
sort of heroic scale.
yeah, exactly. But
Hello, Stephen Cross and Gaz. Cool.
what's the story, boys? Orcs are very fun to model.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did a series of 3 vehicles using like 135 four, I don't know, 3 or 4, 135 scale kits, and they were the reason I picked those because for the hatches, they were the only ones that made sense for orcs. Any smaller than that, it just looked goofy, and it looked like they'd be sort of squeezed in half if they were poking out of a one of the hatches or something.
Yeah. No, I get you. I mean,
How dare you, Lorcan?
I bought a load of Meng Toon tanks to turn into Grot tanks, but the problem with them is they're actually pretty big for Grot
Yeah.
tanks. Like, Grot tanks are actually really small.
Hmm.
Even the one I started converting over ages ago, I started scratch building. It's actually too big to be a Grot tank. Like, it's pretty sizable. It's like a friend of mine, Canvas from down under, years ago gave me this looted wagon, and it's like
Hmm.
it's a scratch build, and the body of the Grot tank is the same size as this looted wagon, and the turret is bigger. So I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I may have gone a bit overboard on the scale front on this one.
I did one grot tank from one of those tunes one, and it was okay. It was the Sherman Firefly,
Mm.
but
It,
there were other ones I looked at were because the Sherman is a compact tank anyway. But larger tanks, yeah, it didn't feel right.
yeah, I think that's the problem that I had is I wanted a mixed bag of everything, so I bought like King Tigers and stuff, and they're a bit big.
Mhm.
But some of the smaller tanks, like the Shermans and like some of the French, I think it's the Samuel and the Lee, the smaller tanks, they actually seem like the right size.
Mhm.
The only thing
Yeah, it worked well with the Sherman.
yeah, well, the Firefly looks nice, yeah, it does. Yeah, because that's the one you did where it's the diorama, and they're
Yeah,
going. There's the guy in front, sort of leading the way, being their anti-tank sort of helper or
yeah,
minesweeper. There you go. My brain could not
kind of.
find
Yeah,
minesweeper.
it paid homage to Platoon,
Hmm.
like the movie.
I've still
Because
not seen it.
in that there's a part right at the end where there's a tank crashing through the jungle, after the big huge offensive on their operating their observation post of their HQ or whatever it was. And there's this cool tank comes rolling through the jungle, and there's like a guy walking his Alsatian at the front of it, and I was like, that's such a cool visual. So I did that as like an orc and a grot thing. But he's like a squig herder, I think. Yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's got to be the closest thing to a guy walking his Alsatian is a runt here
yeah.
and a squig. Yeah. I've still not seen Platoon, so that's how I missed the reference. I need to get the finger out there.
Oh, it's solid. Like it's
I've heard good things, but it's just one of those films that I've just not gotten around to watching.
yeah. I mean there was a huge phase in Hollywood goes through those sort of phases where there's whatever the um popular thing is at the time, you'll get like this a lot of movies about it. So you had like Hamburger Hill and Platoon, and um, some were really good, like Platoon, and others were just kind of bubblegum, like Rambo.
The original Rambo's, yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I
Full
mean,
Metal
First
Jacket.
Blood
I've
was
seen
really
Full
good,
Metal
but
Jacket. I thought that was
Rambo's
a decent one.
ridiculous.
And Hamburger Hill I've seen as well.
Yeah,
But it's the typical thing where something becomes popular in Hollywood and then it just gets made.
hmm
Stephen Cross is saying, I remember painting up a KV2 for the Imperial Guard. Oh, nice. I sort of styled my grot tank after a KV2. But like I said, it's way too big. Here is the hull for it here. It's huge. It's like massive. It's way too big. What have we got? We've got the Ork Commando kits that thankfully I'd lost the instructions for. But Nick sent to me, and by Jesus, there was no building this kit without the instructions. They are
no,
they are ridiculous. So that's the hull and the turret beside a commando knob, and so yeah, it's pretty. It's a
that's great looking.
bit
But
too big. It's a bit on the big side.
still cool.
But yeah, those sprues, man, those new sprue kits, I like the detail in them, but it's a bit jarring when you're used to being able to just clip bits off and mix and match at your own sort of leisure. Whereas now, like you can't really do that. It's like this leg goes on this specific body, and they're not on the same sprue as each other. So you better be putting them together right.
Like I think you can still like heads and things like that can still be used, but you're right when it's like the torso might be in two or three kind of jagged pieces.
Mm.
There's not a lot you can do with that. And it used to be you could take stuff that you hadn't used on the sprue and just flip them off and throw them into your bits box. But now you almost have to construct them
Oh yeah, partially
before putting them
construct.
into your bits box.
Yeah, I was looking at some parts like that where there'd be arms where yeah, you'd in order to salvage a hand or a specific weapon, you'd have to glue it together and then cut it at like specific points, like wrist points and such.
hmm
Um, I think it's just the way that whatever software they're using to optimize their sprue density just breaks them up. Um, that seems to be my
Yeah.
impression of it.
Because the alternative is to have them like the way Cool Mini or Not do their miniatures, but they're very flat. Um, you don't get those sort of dynamic poses.
Mm.
So I think the more random bits they're spliced into on the sprue, like GW, is the more dynamism you're going to get into them and the more detail they can get in. And the more sort of rounded edges that they can get in, which is the big complaint about the what was it, the little studs on the Horus Heresy minis? What's that, Mark 6 armor?
Oh, the studded
Um
armor, like the shoulder plates with the
uh-huh.
studs in them.
Because back in the day you had these, you never had the complete little domes on the armor for the little baubles.
I suppose from
You
the
would have
casting process, they'd have to be
yeah,
shaped accordingly to release from the mold. Yeah.
that's right. So for Age of Darkness, the Horus Heresy release box there, they did them as a two-part pauldron so that they could get those sort of shaped things without those big sort of drag lines coming off them to release them from the mold, which made them more complicated to put together, but ultimately a better looking kit.
I suppose that's the end goal. It doesn't matter how complicated it is. It's like if the
Mhm.
people are happy with the end result, I think most folks would then be happy with a slightly more complicated kit. I get that, yeah. I can see that. There is more detail on a lot of the stuff. Um, I think it's the first sort of new kit for me, the
Mm.
new squad. So I found it kind of very odd, especially since I've been making these Stormboyz, and these are an old kit. We were only talking
Mhm.
there in one of the previous videos. These lads all came out. These were released in January, as it was advertised, 2009. So they're around
Wow.
a while. Still a great kit, but
Yeah.
like most of it, legs and the back torso were all one piece. You're putting the chest piece on, and then it's arms, head, and rocket pack. It's just
Mm.
away you go.
Gaskell's had there made a set of 4 grot tanks with the tracks of a Lord of Skulls, unicycle grot tanks. Oh my god, that's wonderful.
Most of the build is Plastruck. Yeah, nice.
Like the Lord of Skulls kit is insanity.
It,
Like it's a
what was there
fever
was a
dream.
joke when it came out. There was like a Tonka toy at the time, which was literally like tracked, and it was like a character they had, but he was literally tracked and then a torso. So they were taking the piss out of it at the time that's what it was.
Okay, I mean, I love it. I think it's anything like that where it's just so out there. It's just going to be fun. And I've built one of those, and it was cool enough to build. I'm not sure if I would want to paint it because it's a big set, but I like the idea of cutting it up into grot tank.
That does sound like a cool idea. I've never seen one on the table being used in anger.
I imagine there are a lot of points.
I'd say so. I'd say they are.
Hmm.
Like I've seen the brass scorpion, which is like the Forge World kit. That looks mint.
Oh yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
that on the table being used, but I've never seen the big Tonka truck of death.
Hmm. I just love the idea that it's just like chewing its way through living and dead, and then just storing all of their goo in these tanks in the back.
It's
It's
very
just
Norgal, isn't it?
oh yeah.
Yeah, it's very. You'd expect something very Norgly to have like a big hose and just be like, "I've been saving this for weeks, lads."
Hmm. I think the Aussie Arc Bone Reapers in Age of Sigmar have a similar thing where it's just gathering up all of the bodies to be reused, and I think somebody over at GW is into their upcycling and recycling. Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, sure, they're recycling sprues now as well,
mm.
which I find interesting. What do you think about that?
I saw one of the images from one of their bins, and it was a few sprues, but mostly it was a whole bunch of miniatures. And I think that's just terrible that people are just taking like a tub of, oh, I don't play this game anymore, and just piling them in. Um, but no, I think it's good. I don't know. I mean, is it a special type of polystyrene that can't be recycled in a normal recycling way?
I would expect it is. Like it's not thermosetting. You can reheat it because people have done videos where they've reheated the plastic and they've
Mm,
remade it into stuff. So I'd say it's highly recyclable
yeah.
and
So I'm not
reusable.
sure why you would need to go to your Warhammer store, um, rather than just winging it into your recycling bin. I'm not sure.
Hmm. I don't know. Is it just greenwashing? Is that what we're seeing? That it's just virtue signaling on the recycling front, or what?
I don't know.
To what
Maybe it's
extent is
just
that?
another way to
Hmm.
get you down to your local Warhammer store to buy more stuff.
This is it. Yeah, maybe that is it. They gave up on the weekly White Dwarfs a long ago to try and get
Yeah.
people in. That was a terrible idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was I mean, a huge load on the editing team and the publishing team. That must have been just a nightmare to exist
The
in
higher
there.
ups. Right, I've a great idea. How's about we pay us the same amount, but just have 4 times the workload?
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, the producing White Dwarf is like, I think you get maybe a 2 or 3 days after it's signed off and ships to the printers where it's not as much stress. But for all the other time, it's like just this brutal stress on you.
Just go, go, go.
So times that by 4.
Yeah, wouldn't be my cup of tea. Would not be my cup of tea at all, at all. Who else has joined us? We have Lorcan is saying he's just finished doing the washes and all the metals and all my crappy militia regiment. Very good. Glasgow is saying, ye old Ork sprue is great. You can just make whatever you want, but the new models are very static to me. Well, yeah, it's understandable. I get you. You're left with a few arms off the commando box set, which I thought was good. And I'll see if I can use them elsewhere. I am thinking of doing like knob units in this teamed army. That will be like
Nice.
special operatives probably that drop out of the helicopter.
That's so cool.
So I might use those boys kits. It's because I've got so many of that knob sprue. Like and they're only like is it 5 on the sprue? So it's 5 knobs, and I'm just thinking the 2 5-man knob units, and just do them heavily teamed, blood axe, sort of special operatives, and just have fun with them.
Hmm.
Should be a bit of crack. Nan
Oh,
Schneck is
cool.
saying he's from Arizona. What's the crack, bud? I've wanted to loot the brass
Nice.
scorpion. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. With ABS and styrene solvents. Yeah, it's easily meltable. Yeah. Very Silent Mouse is here. What's the story, bud? More than all 5M here. You're in Oz, if I remember correctly. So we folks from all corners of the globe.
Oh, so it's like Monday morning there.
Jeez, it's getting their hobby fix first thing in the morning. Not even in work. Where's my hobby fix?
Speaking of weird times to come online, not that I'm saying you're weird, very silent minds, but that thing they did with the second release of the End in the Death Volume 3, I don't know if you heard about that. Um, they had 2,500 copies of this signed Dan Abnett, faux leather book and stuff. Um, Bots came on, bought everything. I think one dude in Australia actually bought all of the Australasia stock and then boasted about it on Twitter. So within like a week or something, uh, Games Workshop were like, no. They took them all back off the bots, and then they posted them again for another sort of, live sale period. And they did it at exactly the same moment across all time zones. So normally they stagger them and they put like various quantities across the time zones, but this time they just like, no, we're just going to put everything all at once. And of course, it destroyed their website. But I felt for people in countries where it would be like 3 or 4 in the morning,
Trying to stay up,
trying
trying
to
to get
stay
a
up
ticket, and then
and be stuck in a queue for 2 hours and then not get it. Um,
their limited sales model for me, and now this is coming from someone who doesn't really buy that much Warhammer stuff anymore. I don't really actively buy a lot of product, but if I was still looking to get limited releases and such, it's just I think their model is terrible for the hobbyist. I can understand not wanting to have stock left over and wanting to guarantee sales, but I just feel it's the wrong way to go about it. Like,
Mhm.
folks just seem to be losing out. Like, genuine folks who are into the hobby and want to be able to buy the stuff. The hobbyists themselves seem to be the ones, from my perspective, that are suffering. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Um, and I don't know, like how could they change that? Have you thought of it yourself? Like, what way could they fix this?
Like, I mean, with something like this, which is such a rare, this is like the end of a 63 book series that's been going for a very long time, and um, it was always going to be in huge demand. And one option is to like sell it only in physical stores, but then not everyone has a Warhammer store near them.
Mm.
Um, but perhaps that's the fairest way to do it, because currently it's not fair. Them trying to, because their website is clearly broken. Uh, it's just not designed to deal with
That volume.
bots or this kind of traffic. Um, but I think maybe if you were to have something like those limited edition sell at stores, I think that would probably be the fairest. And then it's up to the staff to sort of make sure that people are only buying one or whatever. But then it again, I don't know if that's ideal. The other stuff,
Maybe a pre-order model like that, where it's like limited to one copy per customer.
mm,
Maybe that would be it. But then I don't know if, yeah, I don't know if that would work. If there's
but it
just,
would have to be in person, I think.
yeah, because people will just
Um,
get bots, um,
yeah.
multiple bots to just purchase multiple ones. Now, I've heard the first time I heard of these sort of retail bots was in regards to limited releases of shoes, like the sneakerheads, the people who collect sneakers. This is where I heard of bots
Mhm.
for the first time being used for retail. Um, and I'm not surprised that it's become a thing for wargaming. If it's a product that's in high demand,
Mhm.
people are going to use every trick in the book they can to try and get what they want.
Yeah, especially when the margins are so huge and what you can resell these things for. I mean,
Yeah,
talking a book that was what, £50 or something like that, immediately being sold for 300.
yeah, that's
Um,
that's a bit crazy.
mhm. But yeah, I think in the other stuff where it's like, what was the one from last year, Gallowfall, which was squats versus beastmen in Kill Team, I think. That sold out like within seconds. You can still get it in independent retailers, which is where I got mine, in a little like tobacconists in County Antrim. It was just sitting there on the shelf, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'll have that." But that's like a one-shot deal. It's there, it's gone. They have no intention of ever reprinting it. It
Mm.
just feels like there's a huge opportunity here for like print to order as an option, like they did with Indomitus, I think. Was that print to order?
I think so. Didn't they mess up? What was it? The Vampire Counts board game. I forget the name of it now, but there was bleeding. Yeah, I remember there being shaking of fists and gnashing of teeth at the time,
Mhm.
which isn't surprising. But like, going on about limited releases, did you bother with any of the old world stuff? Because I've seen a lot of people couldn't get their hands on the books because they sold out pretty quick, and then the price point on the re-released miniatures was a bit steep as well. Like, are you
Mhm.
bothering with the old world at all? Are you keeping your eye on it? Have you got armies or?
Um, like I was never really into Warhammer Fantasy. I was like a huge. I came into the hobby with Blood Bowl, so I knew about fantasy and I knew about 40k, and I got some 40k at the time. But really, my true love was Blood Bowl. So it uses fantasy miniatures, but it was much more fun to me than what it looked like to play Warhammer Fantasy. So
Mm.
I don't think I ever had that nostalgia inside me for that rank and flank and
Mm-hmm.
the goblin green backgrounds and stuff. I just didn't really have that. Some of the miniatures look cool, but so when this came out, I think I was much more interested in the map Uh, that to me was something really, really neat to have one of those on my wall. But the miniatures themselves, I'm sure they'll bring out some cool stuff. It was nice to see the orky stuff start to appear. But yeah, this one has I think kind of passed me by. Um, what about you?
I've been kind of peripherally aware now. Well, I was into Warhammer Fantasy. That's where I started off. I was my first box sets were Bretonnian Knights of the Realm and Bretonnian the starter paint set for fifth edition, which had Bretonnian archers in it. So like this is what started me in the hobby. So it is prime sort of nostalgia bait. And there are a few miniatures that I wouldn't mind getting my hands on. I still have a dwarf army, a Warhammer Fantasy dwarf army. I still have the whole thing. I just have no interest or drive to really buy into it, buy the rule books, buy into the game, because I just don't have consumer confidence in the company anymore. I've seen
Mhm.
them I've seen them bungle so many things of late, and it's just I don't like I'm not guaranteed that it'll still be being used in 3 or 4 or 5 years time. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like however long the production run for it is. It doesn't feel like it's a massive release either, if you get me. Like it seems like it's a very niche sort of release, but there's high demand for it. Um,
Yeah, it felt like a soft launch.
yeah,
Like it didn't even have the bells and whistles of like a Saturday show where it's like here it is. It's dramatic video after dramatic video. It's just like on Warhammer Community, I think, is just here's a picture of box set one and box set two, and I was like, oh. And we're so used to I think their marketing drive of like ta da, and we didn't get that. It's just like ta da, here it is.
yeah,
Um,
which was
which
weird.
was sort of yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're launching this thing, and clearly there's demand for it. Um, but at the same time, we're not bothering to put the effort in. So it seems
Mm,
like it's already been handled very badly to start off with. So I've been cautious about it. I hope it's successful, and I hope it relaunches the old world as a sort of to be the Horus Heresy of Warhammer Fantasy. If you get me, I mean, if they could pull that off, that would be cool. And it makes sense because I thought it was really weird that you had Warhammer Total War, which was really famous and was
mhm.
really popular, and then they killed off the Warhammer Old World and then had Age of Sigmar. So it's like that to me did not make sense at all. If you get
Yeah.
me, it's like you're introducing players to a world and a setting that they are really enjoying on a computer game, and then when they come over, it's like oh well, that's all gone now. But here's this other
Mhm.
game that you have no interest in. You know, I thought that very weird.
Yeah, and it was like that. They'd reached the limits of their universe with Warhammer Fantasy because they couldn't expand out onto beyond the planet and the races that existed. And they were like, well, what if we had this thing where chaos comes, wipes out everything, and there's all these other realms, and that gives them infinite scope for expansion into all this other stuff,
Mm.
which you couldn't have done with Warhammer Fantasy because it was a finite space on this planet. Whereas what they've done now is they've done that expansion, they've done that sort of kill all move, but they're like, but here's the history of the planet. Let's go back in time and let's sort of milk that cow. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it's just like there are still stories to be told, because it's you can have centuries and millennia of stuff in there and create lots of new units, create lots of new novels, and even more video games without sort of saying that it's either this or Sigmar. Why not just have both? And like you say, that it be the Horus Heresy of Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's just the thing for me. I don't understand I don't understand why they couldn't have both simultaneously. Like I
mhm.
know there was issues with Warhammer Fantasy near the end. That's why I stopped playing it myself, because I could see the writing on the walls they wanted you to have bigger and bigger units and monstrous creatures. It was going down the same path that 40k started to take. Once they figured out they could make and sell bigger kits, they started to integrate them into the core game, which then blows out the scale of the game and how they play. And they go from being sword and board sort of line troops being the core of armies to
Mhm.
it's shifting more towards monstrous creatures and stuff, which is not really what I was interested in. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I've always kind of never been a fan of Hero Hammer. It just doesn't feel right to me when there's a, if you can have a hero or a general who can defeat half of your opponent's army by himself, casting his uber magic spell or whatever. And I get it, it's very cinematic, you know, the Iron Man moments of, being able to take on a load of opponents and being unstoppable. But as a war game, for me, I've kind of disliked that style of game.
Mhm.
I like my heroes and characters to boost the units, but
Mhm.
it's about the units. I think that's why I like, even if I look at the 40 armies that I like, that I actually collect or I like the look of. I like orcs, lots of orc boys, hordes of them. Imperial Guard, lots of infantry and vehicles. And then I've always liked the look of the Tyranids as well. And the three of them are pretty much, different flavors of traditional army, so to speak, where there's lots of basic troops and then they're supplemented by characters or specialist units. But the bulk of the
Mm.
force is nearly always lots of grunts.
Yeah. And I think the reason I sort of went to Blood Bowl was because they were all. It was kind of like they were all character models,
Mm-hmm.
but there wasn't one that would be utterly dominant on the field. They were all kind of, maybe he had a slightly better throw or a slightly better, dodge or whatever, but it felt it felt like I get a taste of all of these different races and play styles without having to commit hundreds and hundreds of euro to armies. And it always feel like I was chasing that particular Warhammer dragon down the street with my wallet. Uh, Blood Bowl always felt much more self-contained and but still with a ton of variety and still with a ton of fun. When I see people playing like the likes of 40k or Sigmar, and like you say, they've got these huge units, and then they've got sort of standard troopers clustered around them for whatever buff they get from being within proximity.
Mm.
It's just weird to me. It just feels very far away from the experience of playing something like Total War.
But even the
Um,
price point for Blood Bowl, I can see the allure of it, because I actually very recently found my orc team that I did very little with. But I remember specifically it was two. Yeah, I bought two box sets, I think, for the orc team, and then that gave me everything I wanted, because I wanted, I think it was four blitzers. Oh no, two blitzers and the black orcs, and
mm,
then your thrower or whatever. I'm trying to remember a team composition, but I think it was like, yeah, it was blitzers, black orcs, and then linemen. But in order to get the amount of them that I wanted, you needed to have two boxes worth. So it was like, okay, instead of just buying a box and having a team, I've bought two boxes and I've surplus to requirement linemen.
mhm,
But even still, that's two boxes and that's the team that I want, and then that's it.
mhm,
I'm not having to buy a whole army. And if I don't like that team and how they play, worst case scenario, we've spent one box trying them out and seeing what the flavor is like. Um, or if you go two because you want to do a specific build, or
mhm.
it's not the end of the world, and then you have a team for someone else to play with. Then, so I can
Yeah,
I can see the allure of Blood Bowl. It's yeah, I've
and
enjoyed.
if you wanted to spice it up, you could add like a troll in later on.
Yeah,
If
yeah. If you
if you
find you
weren't,
like the team, you can always add in
yeah,
the characters or the specialist support
mhm,
if you want to invest yourself both monetarily and emotionally, shall we say.
yeah. And it was very much kept afloat by fans, which I loved.
Oh yeah, very much so. I noticed that about it. The community for Blood Bowl really kept the game afloat when it was in the dark days when the specialist games were abandoned
Yeah.
by GW pretty much. It's
And I mean, I was in a Warhammer store 2 days ago, yesterday, and there was lots of different specialty games where you just would, box. They have a whole boxed games section now, and I don't think you would have seen that pre-COVID. Um, so they are still trying to support those players, give them some options when they shop in store, because before it was just like one side was Age of Sigmar, one side's 40K, and maybe some books at the other end.
Or even the way the retail was done online as well, trying to specifically find Blood Bowl stuff or specifically find Kill Team stuff. I do remember being harder. You had to know what you were looking for, so it wasn't sort of visibly available for new people going onto the site.
Because now the website's so easy to find stuff.
Jesus Christ. What?
We are way behind on chat, by the way.
We are indeed way behind in chat, but we are having a very interesting chat ourselves. But we shall have a peruse. What can I say? His pet theory was that GW have a very tight production windows and keeping 40K in print uses a lot of that. So there are other games that get slotted in where they can. I can understand that. I don't know what.
I think they were trying to expand into a larger factory in Nottingham, but I think there were some issues with that. But it kind of feels like maybe that's what they need to do. Because if you've ever been to Warhammer, you have been to Warhammer World, haven't you? It's quite a small building where they're doing all of their manufacturing.
Yeah, Stephen Cross saying there's deliberate FOMO. It's understandable. Yeah, they're not going to be producing a lot that creates a FOMO world. Very Silent Mouse said, Old World lost me at no Skaven. That's right. They're not bringing back all the factions. Well,
they have the Skaven rules as a PDF.
Yeah, I think for now, but I think they were saying going forward that they're not going to support them. So it's a case of enjoy them when they last, I think.
Maybe. I mean, I love the Skaven. Like, I keep talking about Blood Bowl. But I love the Skaven team of Blood Bowl. And there's some fantastic Skaven miniatures in Underworld. Is that what the game is called?
No.
You sort of, it's like a small, you get like 4 or 5 miniatures and you play with cards and things.
Underworld, is it? Is it that one?
Yeah. There's amazing Skaven minis in that. But yeah, I can see why. I always hated the Skaven that were always just like this. And they're all like facing one way.
Yeah, because they were cast literally in probably a 2-part mold. So that was the flat plane was. I know exactly what you're on about. They'd be diagonal on the base as well. Like
yeah. Hated them so much. But they've done really good Skaven sculpts since then, and it would be so cool to see those appear in Old World. But yeah, I just don't know if they'd commit to that.
It'd be interesting, all right. What else are you saying? Oh, no bother changing the bases personally. Do you remember Battlefleet Gothic? Do I remember Battlefleet Gothic? That was a good game. When I moved to London, my predominant game that I played there wasn't 40K anymore. It was Battlefleet Gothic, and we played the absolute nuts out of it. Yeah, I think someone organised like a game day on Daka Daka forum, and that got like a group of people together to play like one tournament day. I remember we played it in Dark Sphere. It was their store on. I remember it was Hercules Street is the name of the street. It was one of the Archers under Waterloo Station, and we realised that there was players, and then because we'd all gotten together, we were like, oh yeah, no, we'll get games going and whatever, and we did, and we played campaigns, and we played loads of games of Battlefleet Gothic. That's how I met one of my very good friends, Craig, over in London, was through Battlefleet Gothic. Because I'd bought a fleet for my 40K orcs. I still had the fleet. Because I'd always been bought into this whole idea of playing a campaign with in 40K where, you'd have space battles and then land on the planet, and then, you'd probably have your Mighty Empires map grid and you'd start taking over, and then eventually as you got to the Hive Cities, playing city fighting, you know, and such. So I had an orc fleet for such a campaign to happen, and it was great crack. I really enjoyed that game. It was a really good game. I feel it was not really designed for one-off games because a lot of the faction balance, which I think was a little bit of its downfall in people playing one-off games, a lot of the faction balance didn't kick in until you were playing campaign games where you had to repair
Mhm.
units, and even the play style shifted quite a lot when if you're playing a one-off game, people seem to go hell for leather, but when they realized, oh, I might have to disengage this ship to save it, I can't really afford to repair it and replace it,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I noticed that as well with the game. Was I never come across a game where the playstyle has shifted so much between just one-off games and campaign games. It was a very different game then. You couldn't just throw, games would last a lot shorter when you were playing in a campaign setting. Have you played it yourself?
No, no. I mean, I have to admit, I didn't even know you could have other like orcs and stuff in it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
In
yeah.
my head, it was just like a Horus Heresy kind of thing.
No, 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 no. Jesus,
Oh
heresy.
man,
I'll be saying things like that around here. No, no, no.
I
Sure,
gotta check this out.
there was rules for space hulks, so the orcs could have a space hulk,
Wow.
and it was all, and the one that they had was literally, I think the core of it was styrofoam, and they'd literally just mashed a load of ships into it and then put loads of turrets and stuff. But you could have a space hulk. The orcs could have space hulk. They could have rocks, which were basically asteroids with engines and
Sure.
weapons strapped to them. Um, and the space hulk, because it was so big, would have its own sort of gravity well, so you used gravity.
Wow.
Battlefleet Gothic was basically an Age of Sail game in space because it was two-dimensional, if you get me, into the tree, and it had a firing chart, a firing line to take into account the three-dimensional aspect of it. But it was a great game. Still is a really good game, and I'm very surprised that out of all the specialist games that they've relaunched, that they haven't redone Battlefleet Gothic. But I suppose because it was at the tail end of the specialist games run, there was that, and then I think War Master, I think, was the very last one. I think
Hmm.
because it was at the tail end of it, maybe Games Workshop haven't given it as much light. But a very solid game, very solid rule set. The miniatures were great for it as well, and it
Hmm.
didn't cost you an arm and a leg to get into it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I no idea. I'd seen a box of it sitting somewhere in a shop years ago, and I was like, I don't know, does that seem like something I could play? And then I kind of went off and did something else. But when it actually released, it was in my phase where I was out of the hobby, like a lot of people experience. Um, so it just kind of passed me by, but it sounds so cool. And I love the likes of, I don't know if you've read Hell's Reach.
I haven't
Um,
read Hell's Reach, but I watched. Do you remember your man did a video series using
oh yeah.
motion capture?
Hmm.
That's the one with the Black Templar, isn't it?
It is, yeah, yeah. And the massive orc invasion.
Yeah. So
Um,
I've not read the book, but listened to the audio book and watched the videos.
yeah, well, I mean the scale of that orc fleet, that really appeals to me. Like if
Hmm.
you could replicate that in something like Battlefleet Gothic, that would be so cool. Because yeah, they're literally throwing planetoids at Hell's Reach.
Yeah, yeah. The
And
tactic, like using rocks, so it's like, oh, this is a
yeah,
giant asteroid, but it's basically a fort already. We'll just plonk that there. Yeah. For the Armageddon campaign, that was pretty cool.
yeah, that's wicked. Um, so yeah, I could get into that. But this is going to involve me going onto eBay and being like, oh no.
Well, it depends what fleet you're looking at. I might have a couple of fleets knocking around if you were interested in playing a game.
It'd be
You,
certainly cool to paint and imagine the dioramas for that.
I used to love it. It was such a funny game. So I think the aspect of it that I liked and that I enjoy with BattleTech is these. I don't know why, but I like this whole idea of units taking sustained damage, and it affecting their play. I like that in ship games, and I like it in BattleTech as well, where it's attritional until the point that you then die, or there can be sudden death as well. But I don't know why I've always been sort of drawn to that sort of game mechanic if it's executed well in the game, rather than, oh, you've taken so many wounds, your your profile has degraded slightly.
Mhm.
That doesn't seem to, for some reason, do the same thing for me. I like the sort of the detail that you have with the likes of Battlefleet Gothic, or BattleTech goes into it a lot more, where it's like you've sustained damage. Oh, it's this specific component's being damaged, or you know, your ship has taken damage on Battlefleet Gothic. The port battery has been taken out, but it can be
Mhm.
repaired, or the bridge of the ship has been smashed, so the leadership has been reduced. That sort of thing, you
Mhm.
know. But there'd be funny moments where a ship would go critical. You know, you'd do damage to it. Maybe you'd have these sort of striking attacks with boarding parties, and maybe you'll do critical damage and cause the engines to go critical. And if there's a load of ships that are in close proximity doing boarding actions, shooting each other at point blank range, and one ship goes critical, you might have a chain reaction of explosions
Mm.
as one ship just sets off, just blows up, does damage to the ships around, blows up, I've played one or two games that were like vicious, absolutely vicious, but hilarious.
That's so cool. So if you like if you know you're sort of outclassed, you can just make a beeline for the heart of the fleet that's attacking you.
You could do, yeah, yeah. As an orc player, that's what I used to do with my guys, is I try and board the enemy ship and try and knock it out, because you
Mhm.
really wanted to hold the field after a game, because it was based off of victory points, and salvage was a very big thing. So if you could knock out an enemy ship, it would become a drifting hulk, and you'd roll
Okay.
each turn. Is it on fire? And if it's still on fire, does it stay on fire, or does it blow
Mhm.
up, or what happens with it? You know what I mean? So you'd want to try and hold the field. It was very much a tactical game in that regard. It was about trying to do as much damage to your opponent as possible, whilst taking the least yourself. But then again, if you're totally outclassed, like if you're playing campaigns, I used to do little scouting fleets, which were only escorts, um, and if they stayed in fight, they'd probably die. But I'd try and do what you were saying, which was orcs had brute ram ships. They're ships that
Mhm.
did a lot of damage for their size. So you'd just go on a kamikaze mission and be like, okay, if I take out your cruiser, or then it was well worth my small escort ship. You know what I mean? Because they
Yeah.
were easier to replace. Whereas big battleships would be a lot harder to replace. So if I've mauled your battleship with a couple of my small escorts that died in the process, by the time we do get around to a big battle and it's still damaged, that'll help massively. Like,
Mhm. Like that's so cool. And I think we talked about it briefly at GaleCon last year, how neat it would be to have like a campaign over a weekend or a week or something that merges a lot of different games. Having like fleet action going on in the upper atmosphere and having Battlefield Gothic play out, and then somewhere else you could have a game of Space Hulk playing,
yeah,
um, that connects to the Battlefield Gothic game, but then also have a 40k game playing, and the success of your fleet in Battlefleet Gothic determines how many reinforcements you can send through to the 40k game. Um, at different phases of play, and it could just be huge and mad, but a lot of fun.
or even you could tie so much into it. It's could orbital bombardments, depending on whose
Mm.
fleet maneuver was best. There was a few of the old Apocalypse books that did something like that, where there was an orc cruiser and the Space Marines deep struck units over to knock out the guns on the cruiser, so that they couldn't bombard down onto the Apocalypse table anymore.
Wow.
Stuff like that. Or it could be done properly. It could be done really well, where you could have a kill
Mhm.
team going, doing a sort of surgical strike on the opponent, maybe trying to take down the shield generators or something,
Mm.
and then you could have fleet actions going on as well. There's endless. There's a lot of BattleTech campaign rules that I think could be used for any gaming system, really.
Mhm.
Um, Even the maps that they have taking over planets. Like I have them up on the wall there, but we'll show them another time. But
Mm.
there's a lot of material out there, and it's realizing that just because it's designed for one game doesn't mean it's only for that game. It's like, well, take the best parts of what you like from something, and then you can apply them to another game. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, and it's, I mean, it's not like we'd be doing it at something like an official Games Workshop thing, so it doesn't matter what games you're sort of smashing together as long as everyone who's playing agrees. Um, but it would be, I think it'd be fascinating for spectators coming in. It's like, oh, you guys are playing Space Hulk, and why have you suddenly got more units? It's like, well, over there in Battlefleet Gothic, one of the ships came up beside the Space Hulk and delivered like another kill team. So now they've arrived in this Space Hulk. But those reinforcements were promised to the guys over there playing 40k. So now they're in a bad way down there on the
yeah.
planet. Um, and people would just be like, what?
What's going on? Yeah, no, it could. I think it
Yes.
could be integrated well. It's not a bad idea. You could have that. You could have your fleet game, and there's literally like one of the campaigns or the scenarios actually facilitates it. I think it's called Planetfall or Planet Strike. It's called, and it's where you're escorting ships, and there's two maps. There's this space map for the fight, and one side of it is the planet. And when you get onto the planet, there's a little map that you have off to the side, which is for low planet orbit.
Mm.
So whoever's defending the planet can put up minefields and have their ships and have like planetary defenses. So you can imagine giant missile silos with the like nuclear bunkers with the lids sliding off, and then they have a fixed 90-degree arc of firing up against the ships. And for every so many transports that you land on planet, they tell you to equate that to so many points to play either a 40k game or back then an epic game, depending on how many. So it is there already. It's just a
Mm.
case of tailoring those scenarios to what you want to do, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think keeping it to, I know it's very large scale, but if you were doing it over a 3-day convention, it's kind of putting the uh, guardrails on it so that it doesn't
It
get
doesn't
so
get out of
huge that
hand.
it's
Yeah, yeah.
impossible to play.
I think that's possible. Where it's a case of, yeah, if we break through, it gives this buff in regards to
Hmm.
reinforcements. Maybe a unit that's been destroyed already gets to cycle back in, or that sort of thing. Where you don't want to go
Yeah.
too out of whack. You need some form of elastic band mechanic, um,
Hmm.
like in Mario Kart. The blue shells.
Sure.
If someone's too far ahead, you need to be able to blue shell them. You know, it's actually really.
Better than Mario Kart 64, which was like your opponents just got really quick. So even if you'd smashed them 20 times, they were still right behind you across the line. I hated that so much. But yeah, I think as long as all the games that are involved play as standalones, then it keeps those players sort of excited about what they're doing. So even if the crossovers are few and far between, it still feels like they're having fun. They're not waiting for something to happen in Battlefleet Gothic so that they can do X, Y, or Z in Space Hulk.
Yeah, well, they play at different rates as well. You'd probably have the Battlefleet Gothic game finishing up. Um, so I don't know if you'd want to do them in separate sort of rooms or such.
Mm.
Um, so it's like, so there's no information. Maybe telling them a turn in advance. Oh, there's a bombardment due to come in. You can see that the fleets have engaged, and one of these ships has broken up in orbit. So there's bits of ship coming in on this turn.
And you have like little walkie talkies, so like primitive Vox units. Where you're
Yeah,
communicating from fleet to yeah, whatever.
we did that when we used to go to Warhammer World. Myself and a group of players from an Ork forum that sadly no longer exists, the WA forum. We would play games, apocalypse games, and it'd be just orcs against orcs, and we'd all show up and we'd all play. And then we started to organize it a bit more, where it'd be like, okay, 3,000 points on one apocalypse unit and that sort of thing. And one of the last times that was going on, I couldn't make it, but
Mhm.
I still engaged with the game, where one of the guys would take a picture with his camera from up high, and then it would come back to me, and then I'd have a PNG file of a target, And literally, I'd be like, target this unit. I'm supposed to be in orbit above the planet, and I'm just like,
Oh, that's
fire on
amazing.
this unit. And then the lads would roll the scatter template and see what would happen, and it would be, So yeah, you can have fun like that.
Yeah, that could be so much fun.
Let's
And
have
I
a
think
look at
it's achievable as well. It would just be sort of getting it's the organization, like who wants to play Space Hulk, who wants to play
Everyone wants to
40K.
play a
Yeah.
game, but nobody wants to run it. Is the thing,
Yeah.
It's usually
And
the
something
way.
like that takes a lot of communication and prep. Um,
This is very true. We have a few comments here. Gazgul 1919 is saying I still have some of the old orc ships for Gothic, the old metal models somewhere. I have a fair few of them myself. There's rules for Eldar, Tau, Dark Elder, as well as Chaos, Imperial Navy, Marines,
wow.
Admech. Yeah, there was rogue trader fleets as well. They were really interesting. There was loads of different cool scenarios like doing convoy runs and such. So rules for
I haven't
space
even picture an
hugs.
AdMech fleet.
Yeah, Admech fleet as well. I think they were one of the later fleets to be released. And I think their shtick was like they'd have experimental tech on some of their ships. You know what I mean? But then, so it would be a bonus to them if I remember correctly. But if they lost that ship, it would be a massive negative to them in victory
Mhm.
points because you've lost like sacred tech or whatever
Yeah,
to
some
the enemy.
arcane stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had the two PC games for BFG. You'd think they could help drive it on. Yeah, I wasn't too enamored with the PC games for Battlefleet Gothic because they weren't turn based. They were sort of like live action,
Mm.
which was a weird hybrid. I would have preferred if they were turn based. There was a mobile app that was pretty much a turn based version of Battlefleet Gothic, which was really good. Gazgil is saying, if you look at the old decks, they talk about the fleet that backed up Ghazi on Armageddon. Yeah, I think there were scenarios for people assaulting Hell's Reach watched Babylon 5 and thought that Centauri were onto something. Glamour Smash Face is here. What's the crack, Roxy? Stephen was saying, yes, Tyranids were terrifying and boarding. They were. The Tyranid fleet was very terrifying and boarding. I think there was even a special rule for Imperials that if they were overrun, if you rolled and passed your leadership, it allowed you to overload your reactor because the crew on board were being murderized by the Tyranids and overrun with them. And it was just like, right, now, out of here, bang, and just go out with a bang. Yeah, Ork Baldwin was good and ramming as well. Yeah, Battlefleet Gothic is a great game. Cracking game. Lachlan is saying he's never played BFG, but Babylon 5, Occult Arms, and Drop Fleet Commander have similar mechanics and are both great. There's a lot of decent fleet games out there, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Lorcan is saying he's looking forward to Leviathan shipping this year in the naval combat sphere. That's just true. I am looking forward to it too. It should be good crack. We have a couple of the... Oh, I don't even know. Am I allowed to show this? I don't know. Lorcan, are we allowed to show new ships for Leviathans? Or is that to be kept off? I don't want to be getting myself in trouble now. Showing things I shouldn't be shown. Guys, Orc Discord saying, remember if someone on the Orc Discord once talked about doing a multi-layer campaign, I do. Yes, I probably harped on about it quite a lot. Scar, why didn't you paint the milliput? Why didn't I paint the milliput? Are you mad? I have two different types of milliput as well. There, we have the fine milliput because that's all they had in stock, and then we had the standard milliput. But no painting the milliput. Are you mad? It's not cheap milliput over here. It's an arm and a bleeding leg. It's nearly £9 a packet or £8 a packet.
Oof.
Yeah, steep enough. I'm sure I'll have to dig around for more, but it's not bad stuff. Lots of comments
Lorcan
about
says, I
Battlefield.
don't think we're not allowed. I don't know what that means.
I don't think we're not allowed. All right,
Does
well
that
then
mean
here,
you're
look.
allowed?
Don't think we're not allowed. Right, okay. So here, look, we have. This is not allowed. We aren't not allowed, I think is what he's saying. I don't think we're not allowed. Right, okay.
Don't do it.
We'll look at it. So we've got a couple of cruisers or escorts here, and then we have a cruiser for the German fleet. We've been given 3D prints of the new models that are coming out, so they won't be 3D prints, but this would be some of the new ships coming out for Leviathans. Leviathans is a pretty fun game. It reminds me a lot of Battlefleet Gothic. in that there's ships that can take damage and
Hmm.
facing and such, and it's played on a hex style game, a bit like BattleTech, but obviously it's ships engaging. But basically, it's steampunk ships. It's if they invented anti-gravity back in like World War I or post World War I or pre World War I, where you have these massive dreadnoughts floating around, shooting the bejesus out of each other, taking damage, setting fire to each other, crews running around repairing stuff, trying to outmaneuver each other. That's what Leviathans is. So it's pretty cool. And we've got another.
It looks very like, what's that game? Is it Dystopian Wars?
Yeah, kind of a little bit. It's that sort of steampunk, diesel punky,
Hmm.
World War I meets uh, what do they call it? Weird Wars, is it normally, or is Weird
Mm.
Wars like vampires and werewolves and stuff, or is that sort of? Yeah, I think it's like steampunk, or I don't know. There's that many of these niche genres,
Gonna argue with this.
but it's cool. It's like fleet combat, and it's
Hmm.
it does scratch that itch as well. So we've got we've a few ships, small little fleets that we will be painting up as Leviathans is launching this year. It's like second launch.
Hmm.
There was like a Kickstarter that people got, and then we were playing the bejesus out of it at Essen, teaching people how to play Leviathans. That was great crack as well. Love a good fleet combat game. So yeah, we have that to look forward to again this year as well.
I think it's funny that there's obviously like a 30-second delay in what you're showing on screen to me being able to see it. But a lot of the control surfaces on these hovering mega ships are like flaps and things and wings,
Mm.
rather than being. I'm guessing they go into the air by some kind of jet propulsion that
Oh,
keeps them up.
so it's all tanks. There's all tanks on the side of them, and it's
Okay.
filled with whatever I forget the lore terminology for it, but it's literally like a fluid that's they run Tesla coils through or something like that, and it creates an anti gravity effect. Um,
Okay.
and that's what it is. So literally, they were like, this technology gets invented. You know what we'll do? We'll get our existing ships and we'll stick tanks to them and get them going anti gravity wise. And then of course propulsion. It is a case of they are like fans. They've got fans to
Mhm.
push them back or forward because there is that sort of momentum aspect of it as well of the game where if you're going, you can't just stop your evasion. You know what I mean? The bigger ships have to go a certain distance before they can turn, if you get
Yeah.
me. So there is that sort of momentum aspect of it as well. And then damage on your ship if the fans, if you shoot them in the rear and you knock out the fans, then that's their movement points reduced. If their movement's reduced, then they're easier to hit. But all of these sort of like modifiers, so like your movement modifier and armor modifier, how hard you are to hurt and shoot and stuff, is
Mhm.
all calculated into their dice that they have, and they're mostly D12s. Um, and it's all just, instead of in BattleTech where you're like, oh, I'll roll 2d6, but I'll have a base number, and then I calculate the modifiers. It will literally be
Mhm.
like, I'm firing this gun. This gun fires these type of dice, and I'm going to hit your ship, and your ship has this modifier, this type of dice for moving, and this type of dice because of your armor. I roll them all together and try and beat the value of your armor. It's like it's just this roll. Do you beat it? Yes. Okay. See what happens. No, you didn't. It bounces. So
Okay.
it's got detail, but it's actually streamlined. Some of the mechanics are streamlined in that regard, which is pretty cool.
And are they going to have like these complex sheets as well for damage? The same way we'd have in
Yeah,
Malta?
I don't have one handy. That would be. I wasn't expecting to talk about Leviathans, but there are there's sheets that have the ship on them, and it's literally like a top-down view of it, and you have like your forward and aft, and then your port and starboard, and then
Mhm.
it'll have boxes for each of the components there. So you literally just mark off the sheet as you're playing, and the armor values of it. Yeah, and you go through it like that. It's literally it's one of those games where everything you need to know is right in front of you. So someone explaining to you is more complex than just looking at it and going, "Oh, this is very intuitive." You
Sure.
know, you roll and you've rolled on this location and you've hit this, and then that's knocked that component out, and I'll get to shoot it back at you this turn because damage is simultaneous. But after that, I'll see if my crew can repair it if I have crew in that area.
Oh, and that's coming out later this year.
Yeah, it's just due to come out in Q2, I think, and Q2, Q3. It's due to come out this year. But yeah, we should actually get a game of it going, is what I should do. I should probably get Lorcan onto the channel and we should do a tutorial game. How about that, Lorcan? Doesn't sound like a bad idea.
He'll be heavily delayed.
2 hours later.
He's given us the science of what makes these things go.
Oh yeah, he goes more into the detail. I'm like, I enjoy the mechanics. Here's how to play. Where he's like, oh, it was this guy, and then.
And you said there's like tanks, and in my head, I was thinking like the A-Team remake, where they're like tanks pointing their turrets down at the ground,
man.
and it's like
See, we may have
these things to
nostalgia
float.
for the A-Team when we went to see that film, and I didn't, and I was like, that film was ridiculous, and he was like, yeah, it was great. And then he watched it again later, and he was like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. I'm like, yeah, of course.
I still love that film. I did not like the series because nobody died. Yeah, that's terrible. But nobody died in the series. There's these horrible like Jeep, they have like Willys Jeeps rolling, and then you get these two guys crawling out of it. So I'm like, there's no way. So the TV show always bugged me. But no, I like the movie. It's just mad fun.
It is. I think I think my problem is I didn't realize what I was going to see. Whereas I think if you were a fan, you knew what to expect going in, but again, I think the A-Team was a bit before my time, as was MacGyver and such.
I never saw MacGyver. Yeah, Gazgul says he's found a toy, like a 12-wheel trailer, wants to try an Ork cop. Lars probably more of a Battle Fortress. Yeah, I've made a Battle Fortress. I think it's an 8x8 US transporter, is like a multi sort of use platform, and it's flipping huge, the model. And I turned that into a Battle Fortress. I turned it into a pirate ship, so it's a what do you call the pirate faction? What was it?
Freebooters.
Yeah. So it's a freebooters like pirate ship Battle Fortress based on this platform of this. I think it's called a Hammett 8x8. So it looks like a ship, but it is still on wheels. And it's got like not a Titan, an Imperial Knight's chainsword poking out of the nose of it. That's just bonkers. But it's monster, and I hope you can do something like that, Gasco, because that was a huge amount of fun to make that.
I mean, doing conversions for orcs, you can't but help yourself enjoy it. Like, you can't. There's no way you couldn't enjoy it, really. You know what I mean? Yeah, you have that much creativity and freedom with them, and have that much crack. Like, you couldn't help yourself but have fun. Well, Lorcan says he's down to run a Lev's demo. Yeah, it sounds like a plan.
Oh, cool. What are you anticipating? Sort of the running time is like a couple of hours.
I mean, we were banging them out pretty quick when we were doing this, and we weren't doing really big games. If you're doing like what we have there, 2 escorts and a cruiser, you'd smash it out in like an hour or less. You would. It really is one of those games where you teach someone like the first round. I think the game is set usually to last around 6 rounds, I think. I mean, you could play for as much as you want, but then you'd be there for hours. It just depends. But it's got a quick turnaround. Like, it's actually got a quick turnaround. And it's very intuitive. Once you've taught someone how to play it for a round, the ins and outs of it, going through the movement phase and shooting and facing and stuff like that, everything's in front of them. Then it's very intuitive. Like, it's designed well in that regard. Levs.
And are you recreating like famous bits from BattleTech lore
in Levs?
Yeah,
it's a separate universe. It's like
okay.
It's like a First World War sort of
weird
war. Yeah, it's its own sort of, it's its own thing. There are ships in battle. Well, there are ships in BattleTech So you can have like space battles, and
Mhm.
you can integrate that into BattleTech itself. There's aerotech rules, and but I think they're looking to try and make them a little bit more streamlined to integrate easier into the standard game, because I think it's more sort of geared towards simulation, if you get me, the level
Ah,
of
okay.
detail of it, which isn't everyone's cup of tea. But from what I understand, they're looking to try and streamline the aerotech rules a bit better into the standard games. But you can, with BattleTech, you can jump in system, fight your space battles, bring your drop ships down onto planet, unload your mechs, and aim for the cities and the choke points, and go
Mhm.
from there. Like, that is all catered for in the various rules packs. It just depends on what level you want to go into. Do you
Mhm.
want to be doing the logistics of figuring out how much you need to pay each of your technicians, and how much tonnage of food you need to bring on campaign? I mean, if you want to do that, that's doable. Or you can, there's a more abstract and more streamlined campaign setting where you just use abstract war chest points, and you get the same results, but you don't have to go into the same level of minutia.
Mhm. You a bit robotic there, not just for me or for everyone.
I think
I
you're I think
100%.
you're freezing on me there. Is your signal dropping, or is it me? I seem to be all right in the old signal. No drop frames as of yet. I'm blaming you. Very Son of Mace is, yeah, I was even saying not very good aero rules. Yeah, they don't. They could do with a bit of refinement. I like the aerotech rules, but they're a lot of effort. They are. I've tried them myself when I was getting back into BattleTech. It was one of the stipulations was I wanted to try all of the rules. So
Mhm.
mechs, infantry, artillery, aerotech. All of the goodness, instead of just sticking to battle mechs. I mean, that's if people just want to play battle mechs, fair play to them. But I see it as more of a combined arms game. Hence, bothering to do little platoons of dudes as well.
Mhm. I think I'm back now, by the way.
You're back in action. You're no longer frozen. He's gone
I
all
was totally
static.
blaming you.
It's my fault, of course. Just blame me. If it all goes wrong, just blame me. But what about yourself? Are you getting many games in? I know you're primarily with your own channel. If nobody's aware of it, Grey Primer. Go check them out. It should be a link in the description when I added them. Um,
Thank you very much.
your Blood
Yeah,
Bowl, like,
I
have
kind of
you?
hop from diorama to diorama because I
Yeah.
do these huge builds which take months and months. Um, and I go all quiet on my channel because I have a choice of either putting out little bits and pieces of content and slowing down the build or committing to the build. And yeah, I tend to commit to the build, um, but probably at the cost of my channel. So it's one of those things. But right now I'm doing a big dreadnoughts diorama with 7 different dreadnoughts from 7 different Warhammer 40k Space Marine chapters. So that's a lot of fun.
Wow.
But I also got the Aliens game from Gale Force 9.
Oh,
Oh,
hold on. We'll
there,
go up to Nick Cam so we can get a bit of a close up. Yep, 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 yep.
there you go.
It's like the Gale Force 9 board game.
Gale Force 9 Aliens board game, Another Glorious Day in the Core, and then they have like expansions. You can get like Marines and things. It's gonna
Your green screens work. Oh, no, yeah,
green screen
it's a
out.
bit, bit havoc. It's running havoc on you. I think. Yeah. Oh, there you go. There's a decent
There
one.
we go. Yeah.
Heroes of Heaven's
Um,
Hope.
I think they originally did it as Kickstarter, did they? Maybe not, but certainly there's a lot of expansions you can buy for it. That's like Marines and sort of the main characters from the movie. There's like assets and hazards where you can get storage crates and face huggers and stuff like that. You can buy like the Alien Queen, you can get the power loader.
Oh,
There's a
nice.
huge amount you can do there. Really nice miniatures. They're honest, they're hard plastic on the sprues. There's a lot of detail. And I think because it's got a solo mode and I'm out in the sticks, I'll have a go at that, see what it's like. But from what I've heard, it's kind of one of those games where you think you've got everything sewn up, you're about to escape, and then a whole bunch of aliens just appear in front of you. Um, so looking forward to that. But the mini's starting to look good.
They're in the walls, man.
Yeah. Did you play the original Aliens game with the little card standees, or was that before your time as well?
No, I've not played any of the Aliens games. I played like older versions of Space Hulk, where it was,
Mhm.
but it's pretty much the same mechanic where it's chits and blips, and you don't know what's there. But I haven't played the. I haven't played the Aliens world. I take it Space Hulk was heavily influenced by Aliens. What,
Sure.
what with the whole, not knowing what's out there, movement sort of blips coming up, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, heavily inspired by it. I remember the original board. Well, it might not be the original board game. I think it is the one with the little card standees, and a lot of it was just getting from the right hand side to the left hand side and getting through the exit. And then I think the board flipped over, and there was an alternate part of like the layout in it, and you could have a certain amount of aliens appear at each sort of
Event.
enemy movement or enemy sort of
Mm.
delivery of troops phase or whatever you call it. So if you were playing it on easy mode, you could have maybe two aliens appear. If you're playing on hard, it's like maybe five aliens would appear. But it was brutally difficult. Um, and I think it should be. I think an aliens game should not be, because the movie is all about just it's more who will survive rather than how badass are you gonna be.
I was literally going to say the same thing. It just seems to be more who's going to survive rather than,
Mm.
let's kick ass and chew bubblegum. It's like, nah. There's none of that, mate. Good luck to
No.
you. Good luck to you lasting to the end of the corridor, let alone the end of the film.
Mm. And I think Space Hulk is like that as well, because there's that bravado of, oh, I'm a space marine. I've got all this armor. I'm, genetically engineered to be the perfect killing machine. And then you come up against a gene stealer whose claws will go straight through your ceramite armor. It's like, oh, so we got to kill you before you get near us. And in the confinement of like the Space Hulk corridors, and you have all these turns and little rooms and things, that led to a lot of super stressful gaming moments.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uh, Love it.
When you be trying to Overwatch, you put, all right, okay, now if I put this Marine here and I'll face him this way on Overwatch, and then this other guy will go through. So you're carefully planning stuff, and then your man you
Mhm.
leave on Overwatch is Balter Jams, and you're like, nah.
Yeah. And they move so quickly. Like the Gene Stealers move so quickly, and in close proximity like that, yeah, you can leave your flank wide open if they get through the Overwatch guy,
Yeah, yeah, you really can.
which is brilliant.
And you're gunning them down, and you're gunning them down like this. Ah, it's grand. He's gunning them down. And it's like click, click, out of amp. Ah, no.
And Zombicide Invader, if you've ever played that one, like the sci-fi version of Zombicide, it does that really well too, where you've got all of this opportunity to set up like turrets and little robots and things, and you're organizing with the people around you, or you're doing it solo. There's going to be our plan of attack. There's going to be a thing, and all of a sudden, one of your rolls goes bad, or you turn over the wrong card, and you're just like, well, that's everything destroyed. We're just running for our lives. And our robot's no longer working. So we don't even have backup. I think that's really cool. I think that's what these games should be, where you've got these. What's the old saying? No plan survives first contact with the
With the
enemy, or something
enemy.
like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's how they should feel. I think it's if you do this perfect planning and everything goes perfectly, you're never going to play that game again.
But yeah, it's not going to feel like a challenge like it did.
Mhm.
At the same time, you don't want to be beaten by it all the time either. There's only so much of playing a game and banging your head off the wall trying to figure it out. You know,
Mhm.
well, for me anyway, it's I'll play a game, and if it's hard to figure out and then you finally crack it, then yeah, that's super rewarding. But if it just kicks your ass every time and you're like, geez, we haven't got a fighting chance, like, you know. So there is
Sure.
that balance. You want it to be a challenge, but then, you know, not too punishing at the same time. There has to
It's
be
like
light at the tunnel. Even if
some
it's
people love the
just a little
likes of Dark
crack,
Souls and
little
Bloodborne.
crack of light, a little bit.
Yeah. Like there's people who love video games that completely destroy them time and time again. Not for me. And it's the same with board games. Like if it scales in difficulty as your character scales in skill, then it's something you're always gonna feel that level of challenge. And
Hmm.
I do like a little aspect of luck as well, like that little side of things. But yeah, I think if it's just gonna destroy you every time, I don't know how much fun that is.
Yeah, like I don't, I'm not the type who would be into Dark Souls, but there are others who absolutely love that sort of game.
Hmm.
They love that challenge of dying 200 times in a row until they are.
Till they get it just right, just perfect.
Yeah, until they can literally time the attacks of their opponents and know the
Mhm.
hitboxes and where to move, you know, just to be exactly one frame on and all this. I'm like, lads, fair play to you. It's like, but Jesus.
Yeah. Whereas I'm much more of like a Far Cry player, where I like the options of, hey, like we can go for bombardment here, we can send in animals, we can snipe from a distance, we can just walk up to the gates and kick them in. Um, and each approach has a chance of success. That's what I like. I don't like the thought of like, oh, if this foot is in the wrong place and it's not perfect and I roll it out of the way at exactly the right millisecond. No, that would just bore me, and the controller probably would not survive too too many hours on
Or
Dark
the
Souls.
TV. The TV goes
Yeah,
the
the
way of the
TV.
dodo with a controller shape in it. Yeah, no, I find for myself, like the type of games that I play lately tend to be sort of like sandbox group play games or survival games. So like what have I been playing lately with Mrs. Carnier and a few of the lads? Valheim. We play Valheim a lot. So
Okay.
it's a survival game where you're building bases and exploring the world and, you know, gathering resources and upgrading your gear and going to fight bosses in different biomes and that sort of stuff. Or we like space engineers as well, where it's, you know, a lot of the games tend to be resource gathering and, you know, construction and building bases and um,
Mhm.
going out on challenges or fighting is secondary or, you know, optional. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But yeah, a lot of Valheim, which is a
I
few.
like that. I haven't played that at all.
It's enjoyable.
That's a good idea.
It's fun, yeah, because we sort of do. It's interesting that some of us will enjoy different aspects of the game. So you take on sort of group roles, you know,
Mhm.
where some of us will enjoy going out and fighting all the time. I tend to like fighting things and exploring. So if we're doing boss fights, I tend to go into that role. Or some of us are more interested in building buildings themselves. Dim likes building quite a lot. One of the
Mhm.
hobby get one of the war bosses. Sai likes mining. He likes mining copper and going out and exploring. So, you know, we need it's fun like that where you all decide to, okay, we need copper, we'll do it as a group endeavor. You know, one of us will watch over, well, you know, if some of the mobs try to attack, and then the others transport it, and it's all trying to transport it back. But
Mhm.
I like the game because it made me sort of realize um how we would have explored as societies early on, because it's based off of ships. So to get anywhere, you need to get on a ship,
Mhm.
and it's all, the map is fog of war. So of course, as you're exploring, the parts of the map that you'll explore first will be the coast, because it'll be the
Mhm.
quickest to get around, and then the places where you make the most inroads then are rivers. So it made me realize, you know, about how Ireland would have been settled by the Vikings and why, you know, they came along the coast, and then, you know, a lot of the settlements along rivers and stuff in regards
Mhm.
to transports. It's just, it's yeah, it was interesting for me. It doesn't happen that often, but it's like something like, I don't know if it's a eureka moment or it's like, oh, this makes sense. Of course, most of the settlements will be along the coast, and of course,
Yeah.
rivers. This is why rivers are so important because of transportation, and there were no roads because it was all forested. So in order for that to happen, it had to be cleared, and then roads come afterwards, and so it just sort of, for me, the game sort of showed me how society starts and builds
Mhm.
in regards to exploring and settlement and transport.
And the thing is, I mean, you rock up to somewhere like that and you're just like, okay, well, if I've got a river here, I know I've got fresh water. I've most likely got food and fish. So I can do okay here.
Mm.
If I was to just like put the ships onto the shore and wander inland, I'm leaving behind a source of water and food, um, which is a massive risk, especially if you run up against an opponent and you're underfed and dehydrated. And also, River offers support with reinforcement if you need to bring more people in. Like if you need to start transporting families in to grow these civilizations, these communities, yeah. Um, so yeah, you're 100% like
But you see, even raw
that's very cool.
resources, it's like, oh, if you want to sail up a river and set up a camp, you can only carry so much yourself. All the logs are on the ship. How far away
Mhm.
from the ship are you gonna haul stuff, really? You know what I mean? So it's even resources that you'll try and exploit yourself. You'll try and go for ones that are close to the river because you don't have to
Yeah.
travel too far to get back to the boats to transport them over. But yeah, it made me think of like early Ireland and early England and
Mm.
why valleys were some of the earlier areas to be settled, or even in the south of England there would have been like some of the highlands were on chalk. They weren't great farms, but they were a very populous area. That's because most of like southern England was a very wooded area.
Mhm.
It's easier to set up a farm on a clearing than it is to clear down the forest where the better soil is.
Mhm.
And just yeah, a bit of the history of that area made me think of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. It also has an well, invading, exploring forest. You can gauge the locals because you know that they're going to be set up around rivers to fish and things
Mm.
and to pull water in if there's agriculture. They want to be close to that. You don't want to have to transport water across big distances to water your fields. But if you're sailing up there, you can kind of gauge how far along this group is and how dangerous they're going to be, and whether you can just sort of take their stuff um, and get that head start into your new community. But I don't know, does it have that? Does Valheim have sort of already existing
Players.
civilizations that you
Uh,
discover?
the way we play it, we just play locally, so it'll be like the players against the biomes and the mobs. So we're not really fighting
Right.
against other players. That is an aspect that is facilitated for because there are items where it's like, okay, when I put this item down like a totem, nobody can build within a certain bubble, so nobody can destroy your stuff, and there is PvP enabled. But the way we play it, we play against the environment because you know it will attack you. There
Mhm.
will be random attacks on your base by the environment, so there is that already kind of built into it. So we don't tend to fight against each other. But I'm sure there's like any games like this, I'm sure there's online servers where there's clans who've grouped together and they're fighting each other and
Mhm.
beating the snot out of each other and raiding each other's villages and it literally it's a Viking game. So it's like, come on lads, into the long ships. We're gonna go beat up the Reds. we're not fans of them. And then off they go.
Yeah, I think Viking. Like, did you play the Assassin's Creed Viking game?
No, I'd never jumped into Assassin's Creed for some reason.
Mm. I didn't like the earlier ones, but they didn't appeal to me. But the Viking one, it just looks so beautifully made, and you could tell it was pulling a lot of inspiration from like the Last Kingdom and the Vikings TV shows. Um, but it was good. It was kind of nice to wander around that universe. And I recommend it just for the experience of being in the village. Just feeling like you can explore a bit there. But yeah, the previous games I didn't. They were a bit too what do you call that, parkour around
Oh
like
yeah,
old buildings and things. Yeah.
yeah. But from what I understood, was that not like a core mechanic of the game? Was the parkourness of it? I don't even know the
Yeah.
terminology.
I think that's what put me off. I mean, I did study history, and it kind of the way they recreated some of the cities in different time periods. That was cool, but I don't know. It just wasn't a game for me. I don't think.
Mm.
I missed. That's terrible. I missed the guns um, of more modern games,
Have you
but
fallen into the Baldur's Gate 3 black hole? Quite a lot of people have.
not yet.
Oh, I've heard very good things of it, but I've steered clear because as you can tell, I have a shed load of Stormboyz to get through, and I've been tipping away, but I can't really afford to get too sucked into any video
Is you're
games
on a
at the moment.
time crunch. You can't be distracted.
No, I really can't. I need to build me wonky Christmas trees. Me
I
sp-
got a Switch recently, and I was like, well, this is going to eat into my diorama building time. And the only game I've played with any kind of consistency is original Tetris on the Game Boy. The green screen type of looking one. Oh my god.
yeah, man,
One of the most perfect gaming experiences.
really is. I don't know where it's gone, but I was given a hand me down like Generation One Game Boy, like the brick, and we had
Mhm.
Tetris for it, and I
The
don't know what
4A
happened.
batteries.
Oh man, I used to. There wasn't a remote safe within any family's household when I had that thing, because holy Jesus, did it chew through the old batteries?
Well, it wasn't bad. It wasn't like the Sega Game Gear or the Atari Lynx. Like it wasn't like that because it was running a really basic screen.
Mm,
And the cool thing about it was that even when your batteries were failing, the screen just gradually faded.
yeah,
So it wasn't like it just went off. You could bring it over to like a stronger light and still be able to play.
I could just about.
I think 100 hours you got out of a set of four batteries,
I do
which
remember that.
sounds exceptional, but with how addictive original Tetris was, 100 hours was nothing.
I mean, for me, it was Pokemon Red. I was of the
Oh
age
yeah.
when the first generation of Pokemon cards came in and Pokemon games. And with my confirmation money, I bought Pokemon Red. And I still have it to this day. It was a great game, man. Great game. Loved it.
Do you know what made me get a Game Boy? Right, this is ridiculous, but Oprah, you know that I don't even know if that show's still on,
Oprah.
but
Yeah, yeah,
Oprah
go
did
on.
this expose into the addictive quality of video games, and she was like, "I've even heard stories about people playing the Game Boy Tetris at the traffic lights, and then people honking their horns behind them, and they just continue to play. They don't even pause it." And I was like, "That sounds amazing. I want that game." And that's why I went and got one.
Expose on something being so addictive that people couldn't continue driving. And you were like,
Yeah,
that's for me. Right,
I need
sold. I'll take two,
that.
please.
Because
Go.
I think the games that played up to that point, there's a lot of side-scrolling 2D stuff and platform games, and they were always so brutal. Like a tiny mistake, and you'd be
Oh,
restarting, and
well, one of my mates gave me a few games for me Sega Mega Drive. I have a Sega Mega Drive too. It still works, and there's some great games on it. But a lot of the what was the one he gave me where it was like Batman, the 1980s film Batman. Um,
wow,
there's it's same sort of thing. 2D side scroller, like so many of those sort of
it had
games.
driving as well, didn't it?
I don't even know. I haven't even got to that part. It is a brutal game. Like, oh my
Mhm.
god, I'm trying to imagine the frustration of like kids trying to play the games.
Yeah,
Nigh impossible. Like,
but the thing is, you had nothing else. So, like when you got one of those games, you played it, It wasn't an option of like,
No, no,
I'll
yeah. It
I'll
was
pick
such a
one of the
heavy
other
investment.
300 games. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think we had 3 cartridges for the years that we had it. One of them was like the multi-game pack that came with the console that had
Mhm.
6 games. I bought like a Sonic one out of me communion money that had 3 games on it. And then what was the other one after that? That one we had that one, and then yeah, I had Mega Bomberman, which I'd gotten off my grandparents or gotten a lend off of them, and that was it. That was it. Because games were they weren't cheap, man. It was like it was really expensive back then for a game. It was such a heavy investment, like you were saying, that when you bought something, you played it
Oh
regardless
yeah.
because you had to like.
And there were like game rental shops that appeared in larger towns, where you could go and you rent a game for a weekend or for 2 nights or something,
See if you like it.
and you play it to death.
Oh yeah.
It's just you couldn't afford to buy it, so but you go and rent it for a couple of quid, and it would be all that was on the console, and you'd have friends around playing it. And I think that's why we put up with games that had such brutal difficulty. Uh, like, what else are you gonna do? this, you paid for the game, you're gonna play it. But what was the one? I think it was Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Was probably the one that addicted us most on the Mega Drive.
I've never even heard of that one.
Yeah, two-player co-op. A lot of classic horror settings. Really funny. A lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff. I think your main weapon was like a little water pistol. Um, and there's like dudes running around chasing you with chainsaws, and there's like giant clowns, and there's giant babies stomping through, and yeah, really beautifully made game. Um, and two-player co-op, which was a rarity.
Yeah, that was a big rarity, wasn't it?
Mhm. No split screen, so when you got to the limits of the screen, you
That was
had
it.
to somebody had to decide who was going. You come to me or I go to you. Yeah.
Well, it's myself and the brother. Like, so when we were playing games, the co-op games were the ones. Otherwise, you'd be fighting to take turns. So we
Mhm.
played the snot out of like Golden Axe and Streets of Rage,
Mm.
um, back in the day, and they're good games. Like even now, if I go back and play them now, they actually hold up really well. Um, as 2D scroller beat 'em ups, but they were absolutely cracking games.
Golden Axe was one of the ones that created a lot of fights for people who were, especially if you were both fighting enemies on the extremities of the screen. Because the enemy would still be attacking you, but because the second player had pulled the screen across,
Oh yeah, yeah,
you couldn't see them. So you're
yeah.
just like slashing your axe at air.
Or yeah, because you'd accidentally clip each other as well. So it was this
Yeah.
this level of discipline that we had, where one would stay at the top and one would stay at the bottom, and then you don't get too close when you're fighting as well. Like it's like, oh, you hit me, I'll hit you back, and then you start fighting
Oh
each
yeah,
other.
I forgot there was friendly fire in
Yeah.
Goldeneye. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You'd be bleeding, killing each other. First thing on a Saturday morning. You shouldn't have hit me.
And there was I think you could ride around in a little, it was almost like a little
Dragons. There's like
swig or a little
dragons and
dragon or
weird
something.
lizards. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You could do that.
So it's kind of like a gross little Yoshi thing, but
Yeah, there was a few of them.
yeah, that's
I
good.
forget the names of all of them, but there was yeah, there was different sort of creatures you could use that would shoot fireballs or use their tails to attack and
Mhm.
such.
Oh yeah, the swing the tail around. Yeah, I remember that.
And then
And it was
yeah,
like the orc type guys would ride in, you'd smack them off it, and you hop onto it.
yeah,
Halo style almost.
yeah. It was pretty advanced for its time.
Mhm.
Pretty advanced. Did you get much hobby
I
done
thought,
yourself, Nick?
tonight? No, I did not. Um, I'm building, so I tend to get very much down into the building things, and I would get so distracted I wouldn't be able to talk to you.
Ah, of course.
Because I do things like mold line removal. I know that's not for everyone, but I tend to lose myself in that. I generally will listen to like audiobooks when I'm hobbying, but I am building Blood Bowl teams, all those aliens miniatures. This is my palette cleanser before I get back into painting dreadnoughts for the current diorama.
For the first
What
year.
about you? You've been sticking.
I have been making wonky Christmas trees, as I call them. I have been gluing the clump foliage onto these sort of armatures that I made, which are made from coat hangers that are bent into shape and then milli put at the base, and then a coin on the bottom as well to try and keep them weighted for
Or-
the Stormboyz. It's the clump foliage smoke effect that I am still tipping away on. I've 30 of these lads to do, and they do look mint already.
Furry wizard hat, somebody just said there. Cypher
Ah,
said
yeah.
retweet.
So yeah, somebody has called them 40, making 40 wizard hats. That's but yeah, they are either 40 wizard hats or wonky Christmas trees at the moment because I haven't sealed them yet or painted in the flame effect. Like I made
They
some
look
smoke
great though.
markers for BattleTech like this. So these are smaller ones to sort of throw on top of tanks.
Mhm.
Which is, I think, which has gotten me brave enough to actually do this conversion for the Stormboyz, which is what I've wanted to do for years, but
Mhm.
I haven't had the gumption to do it. But once I did a few flame effects for BattleTech, and they were smaller and easier to manage, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't that difficult. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I tend to be like that with the hobby. I put off doing things until I get around to figuring out how to do it, and then I'll
Mhm.
happily tip away at it. You know?
I think what I like most about them because of the with the orc sort of engineering not maybe running the cleanest, it looks like nasty kind of exhaust.
Yeah.
I think that's what works really well for them as orc bits.
Yeah, I think
But
as I'm
not
painting
as
them
well.
up, only the very tip of it will be sort of a flame, and the rest of it's just going to be that black belching
Mhm.
smoke that'll look
Yeah.
horrendous. It'll be like the Russian fleet coming across the horizon. You'll see them long before you'll actually see them.
I mean I know we've talked about it in this chat like about the orc conversions and things. I just think that that's what makes them so interesting is just how ugly they would be running and how noisy and smelly and just the bits flying out of them and it wouldn't matter. They'd still keep running. Um, or you'd get some like tech git climbing up into it and hitting it with a spanner and then it runs again for the next couple of hours.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Was like that's part of the plan of the narrative that I have for these guys is they're blood axe, so they're like sneaky. So I'm going to give them all silenced pistols because I think the contrast of they've got silenced pistols just in case, but they're on these giant noisy jetpacks. Ah, sure, you don't have to worry about that. I just think that would be hilarious as well. This
Oh,
jet
that's the
engine
best.
landing in beside you and just broop, 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 broop.
Who are the ones who like the gold? Badmins?
Um, the bad moons, and the like freebooters are the pirates. They look, they're
Yeah.
just mad for the loot. But the bad moons tend to be coloured in yellows and gold teeth and bling and
Mhm.
stuff. The clan I like is like the Blood Axes, where they're seen as scumbags by the rest of the orcs because they use
Mhm.
things like tactics and tactical withdrawals, and they like camouflage even if it's mismatched and stuff like that. Um, which I find funny. As soon as I read all of the clans for orcs in like the fourth edition codex, I was like, Blood Axes. Yes,
Yeah.
this whole concept of repairing your enemy's tank and sending it back into battle against them as being hilarious. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. Being dead sneaky about it. You know what I mean? That just sort of appealed to me.
And if you do the Huey helicopter, is that going to be blood axes as well?
Oh yeah, it's all blood axes. So I'll do them up probably in military colors. I wasn't too sure in the early days about using sort of like U.S. Army greens with green skin, but the formula of skin that I
Mhm.
use for my orcs is actually pretty light when it's done up,
Mhm.
and it looks good beside the sort of military greens.
Yeah.
Um,
What did I get recently? I don't know if you can
I don't
see.
know if I
Oh my god,
have. Do I
that.
have one here? No, I don't
Um,
have one. But yeah, you can get a decent look. Hold on, do. We'll do a close up. Oh,
yeah,
Vietnam colors. AK.
AK that's in their third generation of acrylics, Vietnam colors, and I think there's a nice sort of mix of greens and greeny browns in there
Oh, sweet.
that would look after that helicopter really well for you.
Yeah, I have a few of the AKs. I keep going into Mark's models and grabbing them. So I use
Hmm.
them for my BattleTech stuff, but I have a couple of them. So yeah, well, I'll see if they have that paint set the next time I'm in on my lunch break and check it out. It's worth looking at.
And the box has a Huey on it as well, I've just realized. Yeah, very cool.
Sweet. Right. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed yourself and got a bit of hobby done and enjoyed the conversation with Nick. We'll have him on again soon enough and torment him. Hopefully, you get a bit more hobby done, a bit more progress, and you'll get to see a game of Leviathans at some stage. Lorcan has volunteered the demo game, so you got to check it out.
Oh,
I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and
thank you for having me on.
yeah, thanks for being on. It's been great crack. Don't forget, guys, check out the description for the video. There should be a link there for Nick's channel. Great primer. He is a mad hero for the dioramas. I mean, a mad one. He's got some decent orky ones there. Not that I'm biased at all. Some really interesting dioramas. The one you brought to Gelcon, the Horus Heresy one, was pretty sweet looking as well.
Oh yeah.
Very
Yeah,
gruesome.
Sons of Horus versus Imperial Fist. But I gotta say, like my first true love is the Orky ones. So there's I think a series of videos called Orked, which is the one I talked about before, about taking the real world 135 scale models and orking them up. And that was the most fun I ever had with those kind of kit bash projects.
Yeah, the freedom that comes with them is very alluring. You can see how many of us ended up with the orcs, and and look where we are now after all these years. Well, that's it for this hobby hangout, folks. We hope to catch you again. Thanks for tuning in. If you've not liked and subscribed, like and subscribe. Check out Nick's channel, like I said, link in the description below, and we'll see you next time. So take it easy.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Hey.